How does one end hunger and feed all residents of an urban area sustainably? As we move forward towards an urban planet, this is a question critical for our survival. The relationship between food and cities is a long and complex one. The earliest human settlements of the Fertile Crescent, Indus Valley, China, and Mesoamerica developed in or close to the first cultivated sites. The ability to cultivate and develop a reliable supply of food enabled early cultures to diversify and focus on non-agricultural activities, leading to the development of towns and urban centers. The ability of hydraulic empires to increase food productivity and extract surplus led to the creation of the first regional economies and a circuit of world cities linked through trade, conflict, and culture. In this lecture, we will explore the relationship between food and cities. How do cities produce and consume food? What are the factors that constrain production and consumption of food in and around urban areas? How can food and nutrition security be enabled in cities? Can urban agriculture help a sustainable supply of food to our cities? In the early 19th century, roughly 3% of the global population lived in towns. In the 1950s, a third. In 2006, more than a half. And by the middle of the 21st century, 2/3 of the world population will live in urban areas. Cities already consume about 75% of the world's food and energy resources. As the footprints of cities grow with increasing population and consumption, this will only increase. Consumption patterns and dietary habits are also changing with increased urbanization and rising incomes. In much of Europe before the Second World War, meat was rarely consumed in ordinary urban households. This changed dramatically as incomes rose, starting in the 1950s. According to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, consumption of animal products like meat and milk is on the rise globally. By 2030, about 2/3 of global meat and dairy supplies will be consumed by developing countries like India, where diets have historically been predominantly vegetarian. This will have a dramatic impact on the sustainability of agriculture, greenhouse gas emissions, and of course an impact on food security. A sustainable future for our cities depends on us being able to address questions of food supply, distribution, and nutrition security as outlined in SDG 2 on ending hunger. We must start thinking of cities not just as drivers of economic growth, but also as spaces that are tied to and dependent on natural processes, as organic entities that are bound by their appetites to the natural world. Else, the expansion of the use of water and fertilizer-intensive food crops like rice, wheat, and sugarcane, rather than traditional crops like millets, have not only caused an unprecedented agrarian and environmental crisis in many parts of the world, but also an expanding diabetes epidemic. Ending poverty and hunger in urban areas and making sure that no child or vulnerable resident is left behind is a significant challenge. The urban poor typically produce limited food, unlike their rural counterparts. Livelihood insecurity and inflation, food scarcity, and price fluctuation, apart from poor regulation of food distribution, means that the poor and vulnerable go hungry in cities across the world, as food often makes up the bulk of their consumption basket. According to data from UNICEF, the WHO, and the World Bank, 1 million children under the age of 5 die of malnutrition-related causes in India alone. 34% of children in Indian cities are underweight. In South Asia, over 63 million children experience stunting. Pre-industrial cities had close links to their rural hinterlands, and the location, size, and stability of these cities depended on their access to food. Farming in and around cities continued well into the 20th century. As our cities grew in size, complexity, and with the use of advanced technology, the simple agrarian relationship between food-producing areas and market towns has changed. Technological innovations like the railways, transcontinental shipping, refrigeration, and food processing made it possible to store and transport food over long distances and long times without it perishing. As innovations from as far back as the 1930s, like the milk train, revolutionized London's dairy supply, cities across the world appeared in the mid-20th century to be able to grow without any constraints of food supply. It appeared to be possible for us to build settlements in even apparently inhospitable places, like the desert in the case of Dubai or Antarctica. By the mid-20th century, cities were focusing not on solving the problem of how to feed themselves, but on how much it would cost to feed them. Farming had become about producing food as cheaply and reliably as possible. Food production had become increasingly industrialized in high-income countries with widespread mechanization and the use of fossil fuels, fossil water, fertilizers, and energy. But soon, the growing urban demand for food caused unprecedented environmental destruction. Almost 0.7 million hectares of the Amazon rainforest were lost to farmland annually, and about 20 million hectares of arable land lost to salinization and erosion each year. Although we are producing more food than ever before, as global food production increased by about 140% in the second half of the 20th century, almost 850 million people go hungry every day, and about a third of what we grow is wasted. We forget that we remain as dependent on nature and natural processes now as we were before. As our cities expand, the pressure on natural resources, especially land and water, increases. According to the Ministry of Agriculture in India, about 16,000 square kilometers of agricultural land has been lost to urbanization in the 2000s. Increasingly, farming and agriculture is no longer the main activity on the peri-urban fringe as urban expansion pushes out what is seen as less economically productive activity. There also seems to be little coordination between government agencies that plan for urban development and those in charge of agriculture and food production. City master plans rarely make room for agriculture. In India, one of the criteria that the census uses to notify a settlement as urban is that the majority of the labor force must be engaged in non-agricultural occupations.